to address one of the most practical and technical topics, ESOP, Practical Strategies for Achieving Corporate Goals. I would like to call upon our esteemed panelists of the day, CSB Ranganathan, General Counsel and Corporate Secretary, MCure Pharmaceuticals Limited, CS Nitin Somani, Director, Sunday Capital Advisors Private Limited, and CS Sameet Gambhir, Company Secretary and Compliance Officer, DCM Shriram Limited. And to moderate the session, I would request CSB Narasimhan Council member to join them. I would like to take this opportunity to briefly introduce our guests. CSB Ranganathan is presently General Counsel, MCure Pharmaceuticals Limited. Prior to his stint, he was with Edelweiss Financial Services Limited and with the Tata Group. He's a fellow member of ICSI, ICMA, and holds a law degree. Has 30 years of experience in the field of corporate, encompassing governance, company law, investment banking, corporate restructuring, NBFCs, and allied law matters. He's a member of the Secretarial Standards Board of ICSI and was a member of the Company Law Review Committee constituted by MCA to review Companies Act 2013. He's also a regular faculty with the Institute of Directors. We welcome you, sir. Our next speaker, CS Nitin Somani, is the founder director of Sunday Capital Advisors Private Limited, engaged into merchant banking, capital market, and valuation practice. He has a rich experience of more than 17 years in capital markets, investment banking, M&A, startups, and corporate advisory. His experience varies across a wide range of industries, and he has successfully undertaken various assignments, including public offerings, open offers, M&As, and so on. He's a fellow member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, a chartered financial analyst, and also a registered valuer for securities and financial assets. Welcome you, sir. Our next panelist, CS Sameet Gambhir, a company secretary and corporate legal professional with around 30 years of experience. He is presently the Vice President, Corporate Law and Company Secretary of DCM Shriram Limited. Sameet's experience includes regulatory and corporate legal matters, corporate secretarial, corporate governance and compliances, IPR matters, brand protection, risk management, corporate restructuring, and so on. A member of the Company Law Task Force of ICSI and National Committee on Regulatory Affairs of CII, he's a regular speaker on various conferences, webinars, and is a guest lecturer at various management and law institutes. We welcome you, sir. And to further this gesture of welcome, I would request CS Anshul Jain, Practicing Company Secretary, to please present the Angvastram and the planter to CSB Ranganathan. I would request CSB Narasimhan to join him. I would request CS Sachin Khurana, Practicing Company Secretary, to please present the Angvastram and planter to CS Nitin Somani. I would now call upon CS Amit Kaushal, Practicing Company Secretary, to present the Angvastram and planter to CS Sameet Gambhir. Over to you, Narasimhan, sir.
Good afternoon, friends. I'm taking you through the penultimate session for the day, because we have one more session coming up where we are going to have interactive session with our president and the council colleagues and the council members rather. Well, friends, the topic which has been assigned for this session is on ESOP practical strategies for achieving corporate goals. Now, ESOP, I'm sure all of you know, has become a very important tool, and we're going to threadbare analyze. We've got three eminent panelists over here who we are going to threadbare analyze the advantages of ESOP and the other relative issues relating to ESOP itself. Good afternoon to all of you, dignitaries on the dais, off the dais. Quick on the topic itself, as you all know, employee stock option are a popular way for companies to build a strong relationship with employees and to motivate them to work hard in the interest of the company. I mean, just two days back after Paytm IPO, we just saw the news item where more than 350 have become millionaires or whatever numbers. That's the existing employees of Paytm. A good ESOP plan is an excellent tool for business owners to help raise their company's value and take their business to the next level. When funds are often low during companies' initial years, ESOPs aim to bridge the gap in compensating the employees. If the employees believe in the potential of the company's growth, they accept ESOPs as part of their compensation package to acquire the company's stocks at reduced rates. ESOP plans to be a win-win for both employers and employees as they play a critical role in achieving the various corporate goals for a company. Now, so to discuss this, we have three panelists, eminent panelists here. Mr. Ranganathan, I've requested him to talk on the Securities Exchange Board of India, SBEB and SE regulation, the new one which has come about in 2021. Mr. Nitin Somani will focus the initial opening remarks on requirements relating to valuation and further listing of ESOPs. And we have our own Samit Gambhir, who will throw a light on compliance requirement pertaining to ESOP. Having said this, I will not waste much of your time. I would request each one of the panelists to have their initial opening remark, let's say for 5 minutes or so, on the specific topic which has been assigned to them, before I have questions for each one of them, and we'll have a discussion audience also to participate in the question answer session. Now I request Mr. Ranganathan to, you can have the comfort of sitting over there and talking. Well, I thought I'd like to have a grand view, therefore I came over here, but if you want to talk from there, you can do it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends. So I would like to stand in because I'm your follower, so let me. Okay, good afternoon, friends, and thanks a lot to the Institute for inviting me for addressing this August gathering, and a lot of our members might be watching through the video mode as well. Okay, now I think the session, normally it's, from how the test matches have been reduced to 1 days and T20s. Now I think it's a 100 ball format that we need to follow what Manish had told us. So we need to restrict very quickly on this entire session. So let me just give you a small heads up on what are the major changes that has come. One of the beautiful things that as a fraternity and as a profession that we all have to be very happy about is recognizing the secretarial auditor's role in complying and certifying the compliance with the SBV regulations. I think that's the biggest thing that has happened. I think we need to applaud, yeah. Come on, what is this? Come on, it's a great recognition that we all have got. Thanks to the council members who had, and of course the other members whom I also know to the extent getting this recognition. I think having said that, there is a greater responsibility also on our shoulders to comply with as to how do we, because there are two sides, right? One is on the employment side when the secretary does all these schemes and goes through the process. The other one is how the secretarial auditor comes and certifies the compliance of this. So that's the greatest recognition that our fraternity, our profession has got. Secondly, having said this, some of the word of caution that I wanted to share with you all, especially in terms of the amended thing, is the word employee has been, we need to be careful with the word employee which has got amended, friends. Earlier, we all know, when Narasimhan sir was also talking about its employees, permanent employees. Normally, the ESOPs are granted and the SARs are granted to the permanent employees. Now that's been deleted. The word permanent has been deleted. It is employees. So the question comes whether a guy who has been employed on a contractual basis for a period of say 3 to 5 years or whatever it is, whether he or she will be eligible to get. This is one question as secretarial auditor. When I frame a scheme which includes, we need to be careful of that. So please be mindful of that fact. So the one is on the recognition, second is on the employee. Third one, what has happened in this from the 2014 when regulations were introduced, and now it's been amended to have a new regulations in place. The word associate has been. So the employees of associate would also be eligible. It's a good thing that has happened because a lot of companies have associates for whatever reason when the groups have restructured. So the associate, please be mindful of this fact. The associate definition for a change, it remains as it is in the Companies Act. So we not have to go and look for anywhere else. But a caution is the word group company has been defined only in these regulations. We have group company concept only in ICDR. But now group companies concept has also crept into this regulation. So we need to be see what is that group company, whether those employees who are eligible to it. That's the third thing that has happened. And the flexibility to shift between the different routes, how the ESOP schemes are administered, say a trust route or a direct route or a SAR, that liberty has been, though it was already there, but it has been reiterated to say that at any point in time, the companies have got the option to change it, the flexibility to change, of course, subject to the shareholders' approval. That's there. And then the unappropriated inventory, which was lying by the trust, with the trusts. Earlier, it was for a period of within a year. It was supposed to be disposed of by the trust in the open market. Now that's been extended to 2 years. It's a good thing for those companies which have employee welfare trust, which is also administering the ESOP trusts. So one, again, friends, ESOP trust, employee welfare trust are considered to be non-promoter, non-public shareholding, and hence they don't have any voting right. That's it. And the last one, in one way, I used to wonder as to whether a listed entity can issue sweat equity shares. Though there was a regulation in place right from 2002, I don't know how effective was this for a listed entity. But luckily, they have brought that into this. They have, with a very limited number of provisions governing the sweat equity. But what we need to be mindful of is, now, one is especially on the pricing. When you talk about a sweat equity share, it is, I think Nitin will subscribe to that. Normally, it is issued at a discount. Normally. And that is what the real funda of a sweat equity share. But here, they are mandating companies that are issuing sweat equity shares to follow the pricing guidelines under ICDR 158 to Regulation 158 to 172. But if you do that, I can't issue sweat equity shares at a discount to the minimum price that's been fixed. So what is the advantage between a sweat equity share that I'm issuing it to an employee or to a director vis-a-vis, I'm doing a preferential allotment to XYZ. I think that is another thing, but good that sweat equities have been brought under this, but this is one word of caution. So I just wanted to, I'll sum up, Narasimhan sir, saying that these are the five, six things. One, the great recognition to us, the word employee, the associate, the group company, and sweat equity shares having been brought into the ambit of SBBE is another thing that we need to be mindful of. So with that note, let me just finish this and then take your...
Thanks a ton, Ranga. Now, arising of what you spoke, I thought I'll have a quick response to it. Now, the SBEB, Share-Based Employee Benefit and Sweat Equity Regulations, were amended in the year 2021. And in fact, the Institute has released a reference, and that's available on the website of the Institute, on 4th of October through the hands of the Honorable Finance Minister. In fact, we find that there are 4 regulations of that where we need to give certificate. Earlier, this certificate used to be given by the statutory auditors only. But this was a huge recognition which came to the PCS. Now, being a corporate conference, corporate CS conference, I didn't want to highlight that. Now that he has raised it, I need to tell one more thing to the corporate CS. You have been very magnanimous in terms of compensating your statutory auditors, and I wish you continue the same practice when it comes to compensating the PCS as well, who will be issuing
At
this
least I will ensure that I will do that.
So, in other words, no, a little bit of bargaining. I just thought I can put it across now. So, and there are 4 certificates in all to be issued. One is an annual certificate, Regulation 10, 13, 26, and 27. One is an annual certificate which every year statutory auditors are issuing, which we will be doing. The secretarial auditor will be doing. And the others are event based. So, depending upon when the event happens, a certificate needs to be issued, and that is again to be issued only by the secretarial auditor. So, having said that, the fact that he said he is assured, and being a corporate CS conference, we allow a whole lot of corporate CS sitting over here, and I wish they take home this message and back to your bosses as well, that be magnanimous in your compensation to the secretarial auditor as well. Thank you. Now, may I request, that deserves a lot of applause. If it's been a PCS, if it has been a PCS conference, I would have got a lot of it. Okay, but I can still maintain that I am the maximum years experience as a corporate CS I've had till 2011, from the year I passed out in 78. So even in the council, the guy who has the maximum amount of experience as a corporate CS is me. Now, may I request Mr. Nitin Somani to give his opening remark? You can do it from here. Yeah. I've set up a precedent, is it?
No. Hi everyone. Namaskar and good afternoon to all esteemed members. Since the year 2015, in the financial industry, we have come up with a new term. The term is called as unicorn. Unicorn is nothing but a $1 billion valuation. However, I'm pretty sure in the next 2 years, we will be hearing the word decacorn also. Decacorn is nothing but, again, a $10 billion valuation. So valuation has always been a very core around a company which is coming up in a huge way. A company, whether it is a startup, it is a traditional business model, or any other company. But at the end of the day, everyone is working for valuation, not for profits. So valuation had to be the center for all kind of ESOP implementations. When we go for ESOPs, there are 2 different kind of valuations which are required. One is required at the time of grant of options. One is required at the time of exercise of options. Again, the valuation methodologies have been different. The kind of valuer have been different under various acts. But lately, of late, the things are coming up to registered valuer gradually. So under the grant of options, still there is no clarity. Some people are taking it from a merchant banker, some from a chartered accountant, and some from a registered valuer. However, under exercise of option, it is still the merchant bankers who have to give valuation under income tax laws. So how does a valuation works? A valuation is basically something which is very subjective in approach. We always say valuation is a mix of art and science. Why art? Because everything is not available physically for a company. If I say a app-based food delivery company, which was till recently just delivering food orders. However, recently they have diversified into delivery of groceries also. They changed the dynamics of the valuation altogether. Because ultimately you have one business model, you add up another business model, and with that you increase the revenue potential. Now this is where art comes into picture. For art, we have to go on to the future cash flows which are available for the organization. The future cash flow calculation is again a very typical task wherein you have to map up various permutation combinations in terms of what would be the revenues, how the revenues will pan in future, whether these revenues are achievable or not, and lastly, what is the probability of achieving these revenues. While doing the valuation, we have to take all these factors into consideration. This is one method of valuation which is called as income approach. There is another method also which is called as market approach. But market approach is generally not relied upon. I'll tell you the reason. When Paytm came with an IPO, there was no peer set available. Since there is no peer set available, there is no market approach available. So ultimately, you have to get down to the future potential of the business, how the business will generate revenue for the stakeholders, and then you have to arrive at valuation. The third method is still there, which I normally do not prefer to undertake as a valuation method, that is asset approach. Different people may have different perceptions about asset approach, but for me, it is a liquidation value. A company like IT company or a startup company may not have assets at all. So such companies cannot be valued at asset approach at all. When we come to the listing side, under the listing side, recently amendment has came. Earlier, the companies used to implement the scheme, take the shareholders' approval, and even grant options. However, of late with the last amendment, now the option can be granted only once the in-principle approval is there. You cannot grant an option unless until the in-principle approval is there. For a listed company, if you have to implement the scheme, it is very simple. You take the board, NRC, and shareholders' approval, you take the stock exchange in principle approval, and grant the options. However, when a startup company like a Zomato or Cartrade or Policy Bazaar or Paytm, when these companies have granted options prior to their listing, after listing, there are two set of challenges which have to be met with. One is options which were already granted prior to IPO. Second is option which is still available in the kitty with the company. That means the ungranted options. Both have different treatments. The options which were already granted, with certain set of document to be submitted with the exchange, you can have the in-principle approval, and these options on exercise will get listed. However, when we talk about the other set which is ungranted, there you need to comply with the entire formalities related to in-principle approval, and a shareholder's ratification is also required. After that, when the listed company moves ahead, every time they implement a new scheme, a fresh in-principle approval will be required. I think, sir, this was what I wanted to sum up in terms of these two topics. We can take up the questions later.
Thanks a ton, Nitin. Pretty crisp. And only one thing I just thought in terms of a clarification when we talk about million and all, it must be dollars, I suppose, not the Indian rupee. Right. So we're talking about million, 1 million or $10 million. That means you can convert that into Indian rupees, you get the numbers. Last, may I request Mr. No, you still have an option. I tell you. I can take a decision like that, not to worry.
No, I'll make sure I'll stick to 5 minutes only. Good afternoon, friends. So my friend has already covered the new regulation, which is the revised SEBI regulation. So most of the things are already covered in terms of compliances. So I wanted to discuss about employee definition, which is already covered, and a lot of other things. But I think when I was sitting there, I decided that maybe let me discuss something else in terms of the compliances. We all, as a company secretary, know the regular compliances. When we talk about compliances, we have a set of lists with us, SEBI regulations and Companies Act. So we can always see the things, take the things and do the compliances. But what are the practical difficulties we face in the compliance? Thought maybe let me just touch upon that. One is that, ESOP generally, being the confidential issue or being in the matter of confidentiality, generally handled by the HR people. And with due respect to all the HR guys, I'm sure no HR guy is sitting here, but still, there's a lot of confidentiality issue involves, and that's where the company secretary sometimes don't get into picture fully. So as a company secretary, as a CS of a corporate, as a compliance officer, it is my request, each one of you, that, we should be completely involved in that. While at the time of, framing the scheme, getting it approved, board approval, shareholders approval, we all are fully involved in that. But what happens when the scheme gets started? Because of a lot of confidentiality, even the company secretary sometimes is not aware of the things. So there are a couple of things which happens, hota kya, jaise maan lijiye, I'm just talking about the trust-based scheme. Aapne trust banaya, trust deed banaya, these are the things which in the initially you have taken of all the things, okay, this is all is required in the trust. Ye trust ban gaya, ye secondary market acquisitions ho gaya, whatever it is. After that, 5 years, 10 years down the line, I've seen in one of the cases, so I just want to discuss that. 5 years down the line, one of the trustee resigns. Now they wanted to appoint another trustee. Baat ki hai managing director se, theek hai yaar, okay, let's make CFO the trustee. No one realized that the law says that KMP cannot be a trustee of that trust. Director cannot be trustee of that trust. So these are the practical difficulties which, so my point is, whenever there is any action, small action in the ESOP scheme or something, you have to be clearly review the entire guidelines once again, see what all is there. Are you missing something? So that is one thing which is very important, because then we realize, अरे CFO को trustee कैसे बना दें? But then we realize, यार CFO पहले क्यों नहीं बना था? because he was the key person at that point of time. Then, oh, yeah, there was something in the regulation which we are forgetting now. Oh, trust के अंदर KMP नहीं बन सकता, director नहीं बन सकता, company secretary cannot be a trustee. The other thing is that, in a trust, it's always better to have a corporate trustee also, because of the reason of continuity of that person, because the trustee resigns or trustee dies, and there are so many issues in terms of that. So these are some of the practical difficulties. Plus, when schemes are granted, or when HR issues the letters and all, one has to be very careful in terms of the yearly compliances. We understand that there are now the secretary auditor will do all the compliances related certification and all, but then we have to be on the top of everything, that whatever HR is doing, at least everything is in compliance. So please be involved with HR guy at least at the end of the year. Tell them that what all you have done, please involve me. If there is a confidentiality in terms of number and all, you can keep it with you, name you can keep it with you, but let me at least see all your action what you have done, so that there's nothing which. So क्या होता है कि इंडिया के अंदर compliance officer और company secretary के ऊपर there's a lot of responsibility, frankly. In US, there may not be a company secretary, or a compliance officer may not be, SEC may not be saying that compliance officer or the company secretary is responsible as a KMP, because we are KMP here. And there may be a compensation lawyer different, or employee lawyer, or contract lawyer who will be looking after and that. But for us in India, the company secretaries are the compliance officer as per the SEBI, and we have a huge responsibility to make sure of the compliances. So this is my request, that while you have all the things written in the SEBI guidelines, in the Companies Act, the board resolution, shareholders resolution, explanatory statement, mein ye cheez hai na, we know we all can do that. But practically, what we have to see is that are we on the top of that scheme whenever the things are implementing, whenever the actions are happening, whenever the trustees are changing. Whenever there is a change in the regulation, is there something to be changed in the trust deed now? जैसे कि वो unappropriate inventory को appropriate करना है, कब तक करना है, कैसे करना है. So all these practical things are very important for all of us to understand. So that's where I just wanted to convey a message, and I thank you so much, Narasimhan, give me this opportunity.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, guys.
I think the panelists were bang on dot in terms of the timing which was given to them. I think they need a round of applause. And in Pooja's word, let's put our hands together. Right? No, I took them aside in the room beside and told in a very stern voice, please stick to your times. And they took it very seriously. I'm very happy about it. Sorry, you said?
In your voice, it's always stern.
Oh my God. Do I sound very stern now? Not. No, here I allow you free time, because I'm going to ask short questions. I don't want to have short answers for it, okay? We'll go with the opening batsman on my left. Mr. Ranganathan, okay. Generally, I mean, it's very pertinent for most of us. What type of organization resort to ESOPs?
Okay. Way back, if you see, at least from an Indian context, how this started was with the technology companies awarding the employees. It all started with that, because now we are talking about these fancy name startups and the unicorns and everything. But when those days when Infosys and other technology companies were incorporated, they wanted to reward the employees, because they were not having, two aspects is, one is on the the outlay in terms of money that goes by way of a salary. Second thing is, how do I make them stick to the company, and also at the same time create wealth for them, so that they also have a skin in the game. That was the intention with which it was, then later on it slowly spread to other types of industries, and mostly the services industry. Now came the financial services industry. They were following suit of the technology companies, so the services industry. Now, having said that, now I think any type of industry, many companies and many industries have started adopting this practice, because it has some tax advantage, and at the same time there is a creation of wealth for the employees also. So to answer this, I think more or less there is no restriction, but it started with technology companies, spread into the financial services, and I think now many companies have started giving this kind of benefits to the employees.
Yeah, thanks, Ranga. I recall that it started off with the technology companies, but I think now it's widespread. It's across board. All the companies are doing it, and especially the startups. They feel that is an essence of getting success for the company itself. Well, I turn my attention to Mr. Nitin Somani. He's focused into valuation. He's a founder director of Sunday, right? Yeah. How does one understand the valuation and implementation of the ESOP plan?
Valuation has always been critical in terms of how to, what to give and how to implement.
You can use this. Yeah, it should be okay.
Am I audible now? Yeah, so valuation has always been a critical aspect in terms of ESOPs. There are two kind of values which have to be determined first. One is the value of the stock of the company, and second, the value of the sleepless nights which any of the employee or the team member has contributed for the growth of the company. So both things have to go side by side. Once we have arrived at that, what kind of contribution the employees have given to the organization, then we come to what had to be diluted by the promoters or by the organization to retain such employees. If we talk about a scenario of 5 to 10 years before, the benchmarking in terms of dilution was around 2 to 3%. Today, the benchmarking for ESOPs have even increased to 20 to 30% of the paid up capital in terms of technology based companies. Because now we have come up with certain founder ESOPs where these founder ESOP get vested over a period. So all these options at the end of day they culminate into the value which has been shared with the employees. The valuation more or less has to be dependent on the discounted cash flow method. An employee who has been with the organization for past few years, he generally given options at a discount. However, an employee who has been hired today and being retained for the future growth of the company, he is given at par value. So these are the differences which generally are adopted by the corporates while giving the ESOPs. I think that's
Thanks, Nitin. That's been very crisp and I think to the point. I'm sure all of you would have made a note of it. Now, let me turn my attention to Mr. Sameet. How can ESOP help in succession planning, exit strategies, and creating liquidity? Over to you, sir.
Yeah. So I think that's a very critical question because, as my friend was saying, that there's a lot of in terms of technology companies started this ESOP and then it went to the other companies and all. But I think succession planning also ESOP plays a very significant role in my view. See, when we start doing a succession planning in the organization, and then there is something in the plan that you have people, you have identified the leadership or the potential leaders, you have to make them potential leaders, tomorrow's leader, and then you never know if somebody leaves the organization, the entire planning fails, right? So in that way, if you are giving kind of a ESOPs and these are vested year by year, then there is always an interest in in the people, in the person, that there is something for me in the organization. There's something which is a participation in the equity for me in the organization, and that's where I have my career, and I should be staying there. I should be I'll be continuing with this organization. Even if you get an offer from outside, then still you have an ESOP. Your succession planning actually gets successful. So I think it really plays a wonderful role in terms of, particularly in the last few years, we have seen when we have actually started doing this succession planning. Earlier, there was no concept of much, not much concept of succession planning. But now even in the directors or the board level, we are doing the succession planning. So I think ESOP really plays a very significant role, very significant role in that, and also in creating a culture among the organization. Culture in the sense that when promoter gives you a equity in the organization, you are like you are participating in the organizations. Hello. So okay, thanks. So once you get the ESOP, and promoter gives you, or the organization gives you shares in the organization, it's kind of you are also a participating equity shareholders, or you are there's a management worker participation kind of a concept. So I think it creates a lot of changes in the culture of the organization also, because management also start taking people as their they set up a culture. And most of the company, frankly, I have seen where the companies have ESOPs. Generally, I have seen the promoters or the senior management is very very, I would say, employee friendly, and then ground to down to earth type of the people. So overall, I have seen practically that ESOP has actually significantly helped in making succession planning, creating the culture in the organization, frankly. And it really helps.
Just to,
Yeah, I think.
with
yeah,
your
Ranga, go
permission,
ahead.
and just wanted to add only thing, as you rightly said, succession planning is very important, and some of the companies have, even the traditional companies have started engaging the employees in that front. Only thing with this so-called dynamic entrepreneurs coming and starting companies and giving a sweetener to the employees at the initial stage. Finally, it should not lead to management buyout. That is one word of caution that the company
No, I
should
agree.
exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the emphasis on succession planning, I think that's very, very important because anything can happen to anybody. So the company should be having plan A, plan B as in the event. And it's important for the person who is going to have his successor planned out. He's in a position to ease himself out and so that and hand over the baton to the new guy who's going to join in. Well, now I turn my attention to my friend Ranga. Um, how do ESOPs position the company for growth via acquisition?
Okay. To my understanding, how normally, when you talk about fundraising, people also talk about ESOP is one of the ways of raising funds, but that's only, it's, though there is a fundraising, a little bit involved in fundraising, but actually it is for motivating the employees. So when you look at the acquisition strategy, I'll take an example and not a live example, but saying that if I'm a company, say with 15, 20 years of experience, standing, and there is a startup, there is a company which has recently incorporated, maybe 3-4 years, and which I feel the business model is good, but they are struggling to grow further. And if they are the target company, when I enter into a negotiation with them, one of the factors that I might consider is that being the founders, I'll negotiate with the founders of that to take them as my employees and also reward them with a lot of ESOPs, that the scheme which I already have. I think that's the best way to undergo. In that way, ESOP is also is a very good tool for for acquiring the companies and making it as an effective tool. That's my.
Thanks a ton for that. I turn my attention to Mr. Nitin Somani. Now, very important aspect of ESOP is what are the tax advantages of an ESOP? Now, we need to keep in mind that there are perquisite tax which is there, which is to be paid by the employee for the ESOP which is being allotted. But apart from that, I would look at what Nitin can provide to us.
Thank you. So in terms of taxation, the taxation comes at a stage where the employee exercises the right to have options. So from an employee perspective, there are two levels of taxation. One is a perquisite taxation and second is a capital gains in future. Perquisite taxation comes in place when the employee gets the shares. Under perquisite taxation, the taxable value is basically nothing but the fair value on the date of exercise reduced by the grant price. That is the perquisite value. How that fair value will be calculated? In case of listed company, it is average of opening closing. In case of unlisted company, it has to be a fair value determined by an independent valuer. However, when we come to the long-term capital gain taxation or short-term capital gain taxation, once the employee acquires the shares, then there would be a holding period of 24 months for unlisted shares and 12 months for listed shares for calculating long-term and short-term period. The advantage which an employee gets after holding back the shares. So for example, if I say any of the technology companies which have got listed in last 3 months or 4 months, if the employees of these company hold these shares for another 9 months or 10-month period, and they complete the period of 12 months, they get converted into long-term taxation. Long-term taxation is just 10% plus the surcharges and other taxes. So 10% with the 30% or 35 or 36% including surcharge taxation rate, which is there on the normal salary, there's a huge gap. And this actually leads to value creation. Secondly, when we come in from the point of view of company, how they get the tax benefit. So if the fair value is say 100 rupees and the options are granted at 10 rupees, the 90 rupees is something which the company can claim as a deductible expenditure. Even some of the high courts like in Bangalore, they have gone ahead and they have given one more decision say the exercise price was 100, but the fair value on the date of exercise was 150. The additional 50 rupees can also be claimed as a deductible expenditure. All these are non-cash expenditure. So this is an advantage for the company also because they get a tax advantage. Thirdly, there is one more point which is there with respect to the taxation, which again gives an advantage to the company. However, this particular clause is being resorted by only those companies which have cash flows available. So what happens in terms of taxation, if there is a perquisite tax liability on the employee, the employer can take a decision to bear that perquisite tax liability. When the employer paid tax on such perquisite tax liability, this amount of taxation paid is deemed to be a tax-free income in terms of Section 10 of Income Tax Act. So this is an added advantage where the employee is not required to pay tax. The tax is borne by the company. However, there is a tax shield available in terms of exempted income. So there is a dual advantage for the employee in such kind of scenario. However, the company have to take a step back in such kind of tax payment. The company will not be allowed a deduction for the tax amount which has been paid. So that's the drawback for the company, but still the cash flows for the employee can be saved, which gives them a further plus upside in terms of the returns which they are generating from ESOP.
Thanks a ton. Thanks a ton. That was absolutely crisp. I'm sure the audience would have taken benefit of it. I'll come to that. I'll turn my attention to Mr. Samit. Samit, how do ESOPs help in implementation of an ownership transition plan that preserves culture, job, and community in general? Comfortable with that? Yeah, good.
I'll have to reply what I have to reply. Okay. No, so I think you're right because before that, I just wanted to give you one story. When the Google got first listed, I think in 2004 or 5, we used to hear a lot of people suddenly got, they became billionaire or millionaire, multimillionaire and all. So I was reading somewhere that there was one lady who was a divorcee in US, and she was a messer actually, to do the massages and all basically. So Google hired her as a part-time employee. उसने कहीं ad देखा because Google के अंदर तो ये था ना कि they used to have all kind of facilities in-house also. So Google hired her as a part-time employee on a very minimum kind of a salary. And and she was also given the ESOPs. And after 12 or 13 years, she was able to get a good flat in Nevada state, and also doing very, when she got retired and she has a lot of money now. So the point here is that employees also getting a lot of growth along with the ESOP, but that is not the story with every ESOP, frankly. The point is that, I heard somewhere that only 10% or 12% जो startups हैं, they get success. So they get huge valuation, but not every startup gets success. Not every company or not every employee who get the ESOP is going to be a billionaire or millionaire tomorrow. We have seen this. We have seen the case of Skype when Skype was taken over by Microsoft. I think, LinkedIn. When Skype was taken over by LinkedIn, so there were people in the Skype, and Skype did a very dirty, practice with their employees. They have given the ESOP to the employees, and there was a condition set by their lawyer, which was into very difficult language of particular lawyer language, which an easy employee or a very average employee could understand, and which was that whenever they have a right, they can always get back or kind of take it back or purchase it back from the employee, and they have a right of that. And then they didn't give the ESOP at the time of when it went to LinkedIn, so they didn't give them the value to their employees, and the case was still going on very long. The lawyers were actually working on that. Similarly, when Redbus got acquired by IBIBO, then also they have done the same thing. They have not given them the real valuation to the employees. So it's not everywhere that employees are getting prosper. But yes, Google का केस है जैसे, और हमने आजकल e-commerce और जो fintech वाले जितने भी देख रहे हैं, what we are seeing is people are actually getting a lot of money because there are valuation now. So is that answer up to some extent?
I think fair enough. Now before I move on to the next question, I mean, the important is, we had a seminar the other day on startups, and the message which came about from the panelists was that for every 100 startups, only 4 would be successful. In other words, if you see about 4 companies doing extremely well, you should remember that 96 of them aside belong who came alongside them, they did not fare well. So when you get an ESOP of a company which is not going to do well, it's more of a burden to you. So that's very important, and you need to judge it as to when.
एंड इसके साथ मुझे एक और चीज़ याद आई इन इंडिया यू नो मैरिजेस आर जनरली अरेंज मैरिज और ट्रेडिशनल मैरिजेस तो इन अ सर्वे आई वाज रीडिंग समवेयर कि आप यू नो इन द एंजाइटी ऑफ गेटिंग अ लॉट ऑफ ESOP यू जनरली जॉइन स्टार्टअप आल्सो बिकॉज यू गेट अ लॉट ऑफ ESOP बट लोगों की शादियां नहीं हो रही थी उसमें कि लोग जब लड़की वाले चेक करने आते थे काम कहाँ करता है ये टेक कंपनी है कौन सी छोटी सी टेक कंपनी है यार बट ही जॉइन बिकॉज he'll have a great future but in terms of arranged marriages you know the लड़की का father जो है he always look forward for a big company are you working in a big listed company or big corporate or not just on a
I am very glad you are able to link up ESOP with arranged marriage with a very mundane thing, right?
Sir, in one of the surveys that we had, I think 93% of the employees prefer to have cash option rather than ESOPs.
That's a viewpoint. We will leave it at whatever he feels. But I think we are talking about and compensation through ESOPs. So we'll restrict our discussion to that. Now under regulation for Nitin, under regulation 6.2 of the new regulation, there are certain things to be specified in the explanatory statement to the shareholders approval. I am talking about 6.2Q. I don't want to read it out, but you know what it is. While you are answering, how does a CS verify? Now, this is a question from a panelist to another panelist. I am only an intermediary asking it. So you answer him to his satisfaction,
Let
right?
me just have a look again.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so this is basically how you do the accounting for ESOPs. So, yeah, there are two kind of accountings which have to be done. Two methods of accounting. One is intrinsic value and second is fair value. Intrinsic value is nothing but equity to equity value difference. What is the market value on the date of grant? What is the grant price? The difference is intrinsic value. A layman understands the intrinsic value, say the market price is 100, I am getting at 10, so I am earning 90 rupees. This is the intrinsic value. However, when we come to the fair valuation under the India's regime, everything has moved on to the fair values. So the option itself carries the value. Even if we see the listed equity share, the derivatives have a different valuation. So option valuation is a different valuation. So the companies are required to take option valuation into their balance sheet and P&Ls, take a charge based on the option value. This option value, as a professional, we should ensure that this valuation has been derived in the as per the methodology of options. You can rely on a third-party certificate. You can do it in-house also. There is no restriction in terms of what kind of professional has to give this certificate. However, certain companies resort to to professionals for giving such an option valuation. The only thing, while you draft the director's report, most of the listed companies now, every listed company is on Index, so they don't have to face this challenge. However, when we come to the unlisted companies, which are especially going for an IPO, they in the prospectus at disclosure, you have to give that what was the intrinsic value which was charged to P&L, what is the fair value difference which should have been additionally charged. So when we talk about all these kind of disclosures into prospectus or director's reports or notes to the accounts, it becomes that more important for us as a professional to ensure that all the compliances are done and the disclosures are made adequately.
Thanks a ton. My panelist is satisfied. I'm sure all of you would have also been satisfied with that. Now, the third round of question is going to start off, and I'll share this question with Mr. Ranga. One of your favorite topics, okay? I need to emphasize that. What is the impact of issuing phantom stocks? Phantom, you know, the character in the early 60s, the Phantom comics was, you know, that's the one thing which was everywhere, wherever you go, pick up the Phantom comics. And hey, oh, silver away, and that's the way he runs away. So on phantom stocks, what is the impact of issuing phantom stocks on the financials of the company? How are phantom stocks recognized in books of accounts? I remember you saying very clearly this is not going to come in India, but nevertheless, okay. I've been asked to ask this question.
Okay.
Sorry?
Okay.
Some companies have started for him. I think
It's
for
for
the
me.
benefit of your...
Okay. Good, Jai Singh.
for the benefit of your opposition.
Fine, fine. By another name. Fine. Again, let me go back. This phantom stocks, masala bonds, All these things are fancy words that we are carrying. But incidentally, normally, Indian statutes, if you see, we copy the UK Act for most of the things, except the securities market, where we follow from the SEC. So having said this, again, it's a very fancy word, but we have already got, if you look at SBB, there is an equivalent word for that called SARS, stock appreciation rights. I think it is equivalent to that. I think Indian, at least if you read the regulations, I think we are able to define it very clearly, is my understanding. So the difference in terms of phantom stock and the stock appreciation is very simple, in the sense, in case of a phantom stock, what happens is the difference between the exercise price and the market price when you want to exercise. That's the appreciated value, is one thing which we talk about in phantom stock, which is also akin to what is being reflected in the SARS. Okay, that's one thing. The other difference in terms of phantom stock is you can also issue at the exercise price itself to the, which very rarely happens, Okay. The third thing, in terms of SARS, when you evaluate the performance of employees at the end of the year and and grant him SARS, is that you take into account normal performance, how the appraisals happen in typical in Indian scenario. But in a phantom stock, what I understand is you can also go to the extent of, for example, the acquisition thing which you talked about, how ESOPs can, I will link it to that. If that founder comes and as one of the employees, the understanding or the negotiation that I will do is, now I'll say, I'll not pay the entire acquisition price, but why can't we structure this entire acquisition deal as an earn-out deal? So that what happens is, even in a phantom stock, I'll be able to grant him those SARs only when he is able to achieve those targets. And in terms of accounting, that's a difference. Whereas Indian SARs, there are two concepts. One is cash settled as well as equity settled. Whereas in phantom, it's only the cash settled. Okay. And in terms of accounting, again, it's a very simple. I think Nitin will can vouch for that. It's straight away it's a expenditure to the P&L account, which you can amortize over whatever period as per the income tax act. That's the accounting. It's far simpler than giving an option pricing, is what I understand.
Yeah, so phantom stocks and SAR are not identical. There are subtle differences in that. I think I would request Nitin to add on to what Ranga has said.
So I think what he said is correct in terms of what he picked up in between, that certain time there are acquisition deals where you can structure around phantom stocks. Now what happens when we structure around phantom stock, there are certain time cash out deals also. Under cash out deals, what happens? The incoming management, they tell the older management and the entire team that you remain with us for so and so period, and this is what we will incentivize you. But whether that incentive is equivalent to all of them, if they have been given options, are the promoter treated differently in terms of what the employees are getting? This has to be taken care of very critically and minutely, because there can be a situation where ESOP contain different terms. ESOP contain different terms with respect to the cash outs, and different terms with respect to how the liquidity will happen. Like Samit also shared, while the Skype takeover was done or the Redbus takeover was done, the options were taken back beforehand, and then the deals were done to incentivize the promoters to the larger extent. So we have to ensure that when these kind of cash out transactions are being done, we need to ensure that the agreements are transparent and it works in favor of all the people. As an employee, it might be possible that you as a CS are also entitled to ESOP. So it should work parallelly and equally to the benefit of all the participants of the option.
Thanks a ton, Nitin. I think I'll have one last question from my side to Samit before I open it for the floor. Samit, how does an ESOP work for employees? What are the monetary and non-monetary benefits to employees?
So, for employees, number one, that you have to have a eligibility or a criteria for all the employees. One is that one way of giving ESOP is that in terms of number of years that you have worked so many number of years and you will be given the ESOPs. Other is that you are working on a very critical position, then you're given the ESOP because they want to retain you. Third is that on some, like Nitin said, on some project basis, that you complete this critical project and then you will be given the ESOPs, and then on the basis of the HR rating also. So these are some ways of giving. Now, how do you get benefited? Benefited is that obviously that when you get it on a different valuation and you sell it in the market on a market price wherein you get a lot of appreciation generally. Not every company get, but most of the company we have seen that they get appreciation and they get benefit out of the stock prices monetary. So that is the monetary benefit, and that's again monetary benefit in terms of in a phased manner. That's the beauty of this, because when you give it for a period of 5 years, 10 years to be vested each year. So every year you get some amount and which gives you some kind of a monetary benefit. But non-monetary benefit, which you are saying is basically a satisfaction to work with the organization. It's kind of a culture. It's kind of a your feeling with the organization that you are a part of the organization. Your participation with the management is something like equivalent to other shareholders also. So I think a sense of relief is also there when you are actually holding some ESOP, in my view. So I think that's a major monetary advantage of the organization, and you feel safe, you feel secure in the organization.
Thanks, Samit. Now, I had given a commitment to Manish that I'll close out in an hour's time. We still have about 10, 12 minutes to go. And I would like to open it for floor questions from the floor, please. Somebody could, can I do one thing? I will travel alongside you guys so that the questions, because you're going to ask them, I'm going to be listening to you. Just 1 minute. Here I come. Name the person whom you're asking this question, and then ask the question.
I will request Mr. Nitin Somani to address.
Yes.
Mr. S.C. Hans, you see, under the present days, you must have seen that even in startup companies, whenever promoters arrive at some kind of settlement, they do include the concept of ESOP initially itself. It means indirectly they are covering the employees as well as directors. Those who are not going to be occupied as a director, they are going named as employees in that agreement itself. So they are offering some kind of incentives in different forms. I just wanted to know what are the forms. There are 4 or 5 forms listed in the. I have seen some agreements in that they were. I could not appreciate that. If you make a distinction of those 3 or 4 types of forms, by way which we can offer this ESOP to employees.
Fair enough. I think the questions is clear. Could you answer that, Nitin?
Sure. So basically what happens, all these are innovations which are happening in the market. As we said, Phantom and SAR, they both are the same terminology, but used differently. Various tech-listed companies, they are using RSA, RSU as a terminology. So these may be different in terminologies only, but at the end of the day, these are options only. These can be called as founder options, because certain times what happens, a new entrepreneur is coming up with a bright idea, but he may not have resources at all. He may not have people also to join him. So these times they tend to resort to these kind of options, which are also called as founder options. They give certain options or share today, and they put a condition that after 2 years, 3 years, 5 years on achievement and so milestones. These milestones can be in terms of revenue, in terms of cash flows, or in terms of valuation also. And then these will get vested with the employee or the concerned person. So terminologies may be different, but at the end of the day, the intent is same. While being a professional, when we deal with such kind of agreement, we have to ensure that everything is clearly chalked out in the agreement, and anyone who reads this agreement even 5 years down the line, he understands what the intent is.
Thanks, Nitin. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is to Mr. Ranganathan. Again, the question is on phantom stock. As Mr. Ranganathan was mentioning about the modalities of the phantom stock, just wanted to check, is there a restriction that phantom stock cannot be equity settled? That's first question. And second question, as you were explaining about that there would be a appreciation in terms of the price, can it be equal to the price on which the phantom is issued? Can it be in cash? So these are my 2 questions which I want to hear from him.
What's the first one, Ashish?
First one was, is there a restriction where phantom stocks cannot be issued which are settled in equity?
Yes. I think the concept, at least under the Indian context, as I said, SARS, it could be in both ways, cash settled and phantom is basically phantom stocks. It is only in cash, because the beauty of that is based on cash. Okay. The second one, Ashish, when you talked about, what's the second one? Yeah. So in phantom stock, it could be issued even at that price. If I'm issuing at 100 rupees, exercise price, then I can issue at 100 and I need not have to depend on the appreciated value. That's the difference in terms of a phantom stock and SARS.
Just one question for here, Ranga, Sudhakar.
Yes, sir.
One question for you as well as Amit also. Ki what is your view about awarding the stock options to independent directors? Though it is a bit far away, but what do you say personally? What as a professional, what is your take on this?
Okay. I would prefer that, in my view, yes, independent directors should not be granted options because, now I think, Mr. Sudhakar, you are aware, a lot of shareholders activism and other thing. Because though maybe I can restrict to a particular person, not even 2%, maybe 0.5% is the maximum that I can do that. But again, the basic funda of shares is it depends on the market price. Whenever it goes up, then the shareholder activism comes and sets in. How do we address that? But that should be kept aside. So in all fairness, I think you increase the commission levels, and now I don't think there is any restriction on that as well. I think they should be rewarded in that manner is what I would believe.
What would have been the rationale for SEBI proposing this thing?
That's what is wondering now. When the 2013 Act came, they had removed, and again they are thinking of this one, which in my view, I think it should not be, is what is my view.
I have a slightly different view. I think independent directors should have a right to the ESOP, mere hisab se. And in many countries, I have seen that that is the practice. Even the consultants, retainers, all these people should have a right, so that they feel a sense of belongingness with the company. In any case, you are always giving remuneration to independent directors. Not that you are not giving anything. You give the profit commission, you give the setting fee, you give kind of a remuneration. So there's no harm in stock option also at the same time. While they can also think on the same lines, in the interest of equity shareholders. And I really see there's no reason that independent directors should not be given the stock option.
No, you see the analogy in the sense, to classify, an independent director can hold shares up to 2%, while options, the only thing he has to get it from the market, right? That's the only thing. But only thing, Samit, while it's a good thing, you can also restrict it, not even to 2%, but maybe a 0.5%, as I said. But at the same time, Mr. Sudhakar, the regulatory changes have to come. That it should not come that they cannot vote on their particular resolutions, or the shareholders' activism when it comes and says that this guy, so he cannot be considered. The amount of pain that the management undergoes.
There has to be change in
I think there
regulation,
has to be a complete change. Then only this can come out.
I'd like to add
Nitin,
on something over here. Recently, we all have seen a egg banker has been held up in a case related to some transfer of property at a lower value and other things. So what happens if the company gives an ESOP to the director? This is something which is a bottleneck. And this is where the regulator do not want the independent director to fall into the net of the regulator, wherein they are inquiring the acts of the director also, who are probably thought of to work in favor of the small shareholders or the public shareholders. So I'm also of the opinion that it should not be given to the independent director, that independence should be maintained and respected in all terms.
I mean, it's rather very strange, Sudhakar, that in India, any compensation to the independent director in terms of payment of money or percentage of profits is fair enough. But when it comes to giving ESOP, now that there is the mental makeup, no, that should not be done.
In fact,
somehow I'm not able to stomach it. Although
I
the
fully
rules.
agree with you. I am of the same school to which Ranga and Nitin also belongs to. In fact, in one of my articles which I have written, I have mentioned that it may not be even attractive to the independent directors because most of the independent directors are senior citizens. Okay, for them, if you give it actually the way SEBI has proposed it, it is not an attractive proposal according to me. The same rationale what you have given here, I have also given in my article.
Thank you, Sudhakar. And let's have a question from the
Just a
young
quick-
lady over there. Yeah, ma'am.
With due respect, so thank you. So only one question. Can you just throw
You can have two questions. You can ask two questions.
Can you throw light on iSafe notes? There are companies, there are startups who are using corporate action by issuing not shares but in kind of a notes, iSafe notes.
Come again on that.
There are companies who are using a corporate action by way of issuing iSafe notes. iSafe notes, like a similar lines on similar lines of phantom stocks do the way we have it. So we do have a iSafe notes on a Regulatory Companies Act. The terminology is not defined yet, but there are private or startups funding those. The investors are doing it. So if you have come across any lines on that, would be appreciated.
I would say this is something sort of bitcoins. These are unregulated, but yet the companies are going ahead and trying with certain innovative structures. We are borrowing certain things from the universe also, from other foreign countries. So this is a sort of note wherein you give a right, a option, but these are not convertible into equity. So this is again, if we say,
Cashable option.
yeah, cash out. These are cash out instruments like SAR or phantom stocks only. You just change the terminology or the color of the instrument, but the ultimate objective remains the same.
Yeah, go ahead. Ashish, Bol. I think. Could you spare the mic to him? Anybody else? We still have 2 minutes to go.
My question is to Samit. Going back to the previous discussion on whether to give the options to independent directors or not, and I will add to the point of Nitin. So, Samit, I just wanted to check with you. Don't you think it would be a riskier proposition, and by doing this, they would start taking risky calls? And we have a latest example, which I think
I think we need to have a kind of a maturity now in terms of people who are coming to the board. So point here is that it's not necessary. It's not that something is forced to you, but there should be an option to the independent directors. After all, they can buy the shares from the market. They are buying the share through their trust, through their family members, others. They are always buying it. So if there is an option given to independent director, there is no harm in that. Up to some extent, we really feel that people we are bringing on the board are the mature enough people to take care of themselves, their interest and conflict of interest and everything. So I don't see any reason, frankly, but yeah, up to some extent it's a mental block, but up to some extent there could be reason in the past practices or the past scenarios, the past cases must have happened. But somehow, we'll have to liberalize on that, I think. I feel so.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir,
Yeah,
in-
one last question,
in
gentlemen.
most
One
of-
last question. Quick,
Yes.
only question, no answer.
Okay,
Go
okay.
ahead.
In most of the companies, you will notice that most of the people are hired from outside, including the consultants. Why they are not going to be offered this ESOP schemes? Is there any specific reason for that?
I think it's a bit mumbled up. I could not really get across to your question.
Sir, people are hired
Yeah,
in the company, including the consultants,
Correct.
for limited period. And they are for the last number of years, they are associated with the company directly or indirectly. They are not being offered the ESOP scheme. Is there any particular reason?
I think, see, employee definition, go back and see the employee definition. Now the word permanent has been deleted. So you are going to get such kind of
You
questions
can.
now.
So you mean to say consultants can be given this?
you are eligible to give now. I think the definition of employee has changed.
Okay.
So it's not permanent employee. So even a consultant becomes an employee technically.
Only thing, the word employee, again, you need to go back and see under the other regulations, whether he is eligible for the PF and
it says designated, who is designated as an employee. So in some countries, actually, consultants are eligible for ESOPs, frankly.
Acha,
US,
PF
I
and
think
all that.
consultants are eligible for that.
I mean, there seems to be a diverse opinion over here. We have Nitin saying that, unless you are deducting PF, etc., you're not an employee. Unless an employee, not a consultant. Consultant, obviously, it's only a combined package which is being given. Therefore, sorry?
But these questions are going to come now.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Wonderful. You also stuck to the time. Now I'll ask Pooja to do the honors. We have Mr. Hitendra Mehta who's coming here. Praveen Soni, I'm sure you will take their benefit in terms of handing over the Shahid Ki Beti certificate. I'm prompting you to do it, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. So we had a very serious topic, a technical session, and an intelligent discussion. But frankly, it's because of you that we all have been grinning from ear to ear the entire time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much to the entire panel.
Thank you.
And to extend our vote of thanks, we have amongst us CS Hitendra Mehta, as I've been told to do the honors for the Shahid Ki Beti certificate. To Mr. C.S.B. Ranganathan. I would now call upon CS Bipul Barot, Head Legal and CSR. Yes, sir. Mr. Vipul Baroth, Head Legal and CSR for BOB Financial. To Mr. C.S. Nitin Somani. And C.S. Praveen Soni. And C.S. Rahul Verma, immediate past chairman, Bhilwara chapter. To C.S. Amit Gambhir. You're a part of the panel, sir.
प्रवीण तू साइड में खींच के लेके जा अच्छा इधर आ जाओ
A big thanks to all of you, sir. Thank you.
आ जाओ यार काउंसिल मेंबर्स को आ जाओ यार बस प्रेसिडेंट आ जाओ ना आज सेपरेटली बोलना पड़ेगा
And that brings our technical sessions for the day to an end. We'll be beginning with the interactive session in the next few minutes. I would request all the delegates to please be here.
without being a council member, you are a council member. You are one step beyond a council. You are one step beyond a council. Thank you.
Thank you, Nana sir. Wonderful moderation.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful. Thank you, Nitin. Thank you.